Sorry. I did not know we were recording. Sorry. We want to welcome you to the Wednesday edition of the Hog Talk podcast, powered by the law offices of Robertson, Beasley, Shipley, and Robinson PLLC, with offices in Springdale, Fort Smith, and Ozark. They're the oldest full-service law firm in the River Valley. And with that, we will go to the Camelot Exteriors hotline and introduce Chris Phillips, the host of the biggest podcast in South Carolina, the Spurs Up Show, covering all things South Carolina. And sorry for the reading material. My wife says read 20 minutes a day. It really expands your mind. So I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, well, when it's Clem Sucks reading material, I don't know that it's going to expand much of anything for you. I see the helmet, too, in the background.
Yes, sir.
We will forgive it, seeing as it's South Carolina, Arkansas week, man. I appreciate you guys having me on. It was a no-brainer when you reached out. Definitely want to come on and talk some ball. And like I said, I just appreciate the opportunity.
Hey, well, like I said, as soon as, it was scheduled, and Arkansas used to play South Carolina a lot more than what they do now. I mean, I followed your stuff as much as hard as it is to say, but, when you got family and stuff in South Carolina, you kind of, you know what to expect when, South Carolina week. And I definitely had to reach out and bring you on. So, I mean, yeah, I really appreciate you coming on and really looking forward to, breaking down this game. And I think we're having a little bit of technical difficulties with Chris, but just a little backstory. Chris, biggest podcast in South Carolina. We got a big game coming up against South Carolina coming up at 11 a.m. Both teams coming off of a win, much needed win for Arkansas over a Cincinnati team. So South Carolina coming over a win and a little sluggish. Both teams can really say they kind of got off to a slow start, but with this big game, it's not as big as what it used to be back when, Arkansas and South Carolina come in back into the SEC at the same time. So for this rivalry, we always remember the block in Little Rock. So there's always been some big games when it's come to South Carolina and Arkansas playing. And there for a while, they've been and even when it comes to program-wise, welcome back. I was just going on about, when Arkansas and South Carolina used to play a lot. And it's cool to see this game, because for the most part, it was always an evenly matched rivalry. I would say rivalry or East-West rivalry, but coming into the SEC at the same time, they can kind of hold that badge of honor together that they've been in this since 92.
Yeah, well, first thing I want to apologize. So my crowd, whenever technical difficulties happen like that, we call it the Muschamp Hackers, right? Because of obvious reasons. So I do apologize. It was that
third down crow that made you lose connection.
That or either I think the Clem Sucks stuff in the background just messing up the signal. Either way, though, no, it is. I can tell you this. I think I speak for most of Gamecock Nation. We miss playing you guys, and I don't mean that in like a slight, like Arkansas was some easy W on the schedule, far from it. It's because I'm really sick of watching us play Texas A&M, to be totally honest with you. So
yeah,
no, it was a great series, man. A lot of great games, a lot of great memories. Like you mentioned, both Arkansas and South kind of came to the league in 1992, so they sort of have that bond together and have sort of been through similar struggles. And I think right now what's so interesting is that it's two programs that feel like they're in similar spots. And you look at the coaches as well. I think that's one of the big storylines going in the game is, Sam Pittman in year 3, Shane Beamer in year 2. But, when you talk about in college coaching now, it's about finding the right cultural fit. And these two guys feel like cultural fits for their respective schools. I mean, obviously Sam Pittman is all thing Hogs. I mean, his post game on Saturday was legendary. I think I'm going to have me a cold beer. Not promoting it now. I mean, Sam Pittman's a legend. And, of course, Shane Beamer with his past and track record at South Carolina and coming back and being the guy and embracing USC. And, it feels like he's the perfect fit in Columbia as well, at least right now. But this is a really big game for both programs, both coaches. Again, I feel like programs that are sort of similar in the sense of they're trying to break through and show they're on a true positive trajectory. Obviously, last year was year 2 and was Arkansas's breakout year. South Carolina, I feel like, is trying to be this year's Arkansas of last year, if that makes sense. So, now listen, it's always been a great history, great rivalry. It's interesting how it's gone too with the back and forth, and it felt like for a while Arkansas was getting South Carolina every single year, and the Gamecocks were getting the better of Arkansas. Real good, just back and forth. I mean, I feel like there's some games and series, and again, I speak specifically on like a Texas A&M where it feels so lopsided. I mean, you literally never beat those guys. The South Carolina Arkansas series, it feels like it's been a really good back and forth. Dare I call it a rivalry, but that was one you always look down the schedule and say that's one you can almost count on is going to be a really, really good, fun, and entertaining football game.
Yeah, and if you look at South Carolina's program, it's almost like if you look at the coaching in the program since you're a year behind Arkansas because of what y'all went through, what we went through with the Chad Morris and the John L. Smith years. You look at Arkansas and South Carolina 10 years ago. South Carolina went to the SEC championship game, and they were on all-time high. You had Davian Clowney, and the running back Lattimore.
Marcus Lattimore, yeah.
The highs you had were really, really high. And that's like Arkansas. You look back through history and you look, Arkansas had some really good years in the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s, and South Carolina sprinkle in. You had your years with Connor Shaw. You had those years with Garcia that were really good. And then you've kind of had a stretch where things are just rebuilding, and Arkansas can say the same thing because now we got our foundation with, you've got the coaches, with Odom, Browse, and Pittman. So it takes like Beamer building that foundation and getting that core around him. You build that foundation and being in the East. I mean, you can get back to where they used to be.
No, for sure. And I mean, I think he's also built that core. I was just thinking in my head, Beamer, Rattler. I mean, we've obviously got, you can show it right here, man, the Beamer Rattler merchandise, obviously. So, I mean, it's the core has been built there. Then, of course, Clayton White on the defensive side. We were just watching the final episode of the Welcome Home South Carolina football series, and they were showing Clayton White. And I literally put a tweet out there like, give Clayton White a blank check and do whatever you can to keep him in COLA forever. He feels like one of those assistant coaches, of course, the defensive coordinator that, you'd love to see stick around as long as possible. But, again, it's early. Shane Beamer's building. But, again, I think I speak for all of Gamecock Nation. We say we're extremely confident. I joke with people all the time that I wouldn't put his name on merchandise if I didn't believe in the guy. But I really mean it. You know what I mean? It's funny for me because I started doing what I do in 2017, January 2017. And, a lot of my business was built on the back of calling for Will Muschampe's job. Just call it for what it is. And I remember when he was finally let go and Shane Beamer was hired. And what I was most excited about, or one of the things I was most excited for, was people finally got to see what my content and what I was like pulling for and supporting a coach that I really, truly believed in. And I think Gamecock Nation obviously is behind this guy. They believe in him. Again, a guy that, by all accounts, he wants to be here. He loves USC. He sees South Carolina football for what it can be, not what it's always been. And I think that goes a long way. So it is still really early. Again, it's year 2. But, of course, in this business, right, it's a results-oriented business. People want results now. Nobody wants to be patient, which is why year 2 for Pittman was so big for him. But now there's even more pressure, right, in year 3. Now you got people. I was talking to my buddy Brad Crawford at 24/7 Sports before the season and talking to others. They're picking Arkansas to go 10-2 and compete with Bama for the West. And that's a lot of pressure. You know what I mean? People want to win now. Coaches don't get this 5, 6, 7 year plan anymore to build a program and stack a couple of classes. It's like by year 3, if you're not showing that trajectory, they start turning south on you and saying, well, maybe this isn't the guy. You know what I mean? So Shane Beamer's not immune to that. No coach is immune to that. I don't care how good of a culture fit you are. If you don't win, none of it really matters. But, I think everybody in Columbia and Gamecock Nation feels really confident that Shane Beamer is the guy. I don't know about to get into an SEC championship or a national championship. You hope, obviously, that could happen, especially because you look at what the rival up the road is doing. But I think if nothing else, I'll say this, I feel confident that Shane Beamer is the guy to bring really much needed stability to the program in regards to not be shuffling head coaches and be a guy that's going to be there for a long time and bring the Gamecocks, if nothing else, to a 7 to 8 win per year minimum program. And that might not sound like a lot to some people, but it's all about, you got to walk before you can run, right? Taking baby steps, building your program into, hey, this is a legitimate like sleeping giant. People just throw that term around, but you have to build to almost that level first, where you feel like, and I've told people, maybe Shane Beamer is the guy that gets you to the guy, if that makes sense. You know what I mean?
Well, that's what we're dealing with Sam Pittman. When Sam Pittman come along, they wasn't expecting this 9-win season last year. They were looking for a coach, save us, throw some water on the fire. And that's kind of what I was going to get into with
following up from Chad Morris, right?
Yeah. That left lane hammer down.
The bar was very low.
Yeah.
I mean, dude, same way with Carolina, though. I mean, last year, what's so interesting is like, the difference in hype going into last year, we were all hyped and excited just because it was like, okay, we're excited for game day again. Thank God Will Muschamp isn't our coach anymore. And so now
when Shane Beamer, I wanted to ask you, when he was, when y'all were searching for, was he like high on the list, or was this kind of, because like Pittman, everybody had, I mean, we got plane trackers out here. Like there's people tracking planes on who's coming into Fayetteville, seeing, well, this might be the guy. This might be the guy. Was he like in the first like top 3 picks, or was this out of left field on when his name come up?
I think when the job first opened up, I mean, I'll be totally honest on my end, Shane Beamer wasn't the top of my list. It was the typical guys like the Joe Brady's, the Billy Napiers, Hugh Freeze's name was thrown around. But I think what happened is obviously over time, and Shane Beamer was in the mix, but I'll be honest, on my list, he was like 4th or 5th down, just because you're talking about a guy who had never been a head coach before. And so it's a serious roll of the dice. I don't care how much you love the school, or, I mean, you're talking about a guy who has no coaching experience. It could go south in a hurry if he doesn't know what he's doing. He's in over his head. But really what it was, man, I'll tell you this, I've been fortunate enough to have tons of former players on our platform and on my show. And I had a lot of guys on that played at South Carolina from 2010 to 13 and that magical run and the best years in school history. And a lot of these guys that know Coach Beamer, that played under him. And you really started to feel the support from the former players and guys that knew him and said, hey, we need to get a guy in here that's one of us, that, that this is not, people started to realize this is not a cookie cutter job. This is not just just go get some guy with a national title and he's going to succeed. No brainer. It's South Carolina is a unique place because it's a tough place to win. It's not an easy place to win. You need to have someone that's willing to come in, embraces the challenge, but also, again, sees it for what it can be and not what it's always been. And Shane Beamer was the guy that fit that mold. You felt like a Hugh Freeze, right? Like he was a name. Let's just say it worked out. But I felt like Hugh Freeze was a guy that was going to be at South Carolina for 2 or 3 years and then jump to get the bigger job. Like Shane Beamer's not that guy. And they needed a guy that would come in and give this fan base almost, and this program almost a proverbial hug, if you will, and make us feel good. So again, what I was saying is the interesting thing is going into last year, that's really why you had the hype and momentum, is because just the change, and thank God Muschamp isn't the coach. What's been fun this year is coming into this season, you felt like we have real on-field reason to be hyped and excited because of the ads and the transfers, and obviously Spencer Rattler. And now you see the momentum on the recruiting trail. And obviously week 1 was a little bit shaky, which I know we'll probably get into, but huge opportunity for the Gamecocks this weekend. Obviously I know it's a huge game for Arkansas as well. I mean, your first SEC game, it's always a big one, man, because it sets the tone.
Man, a little technical difficulty. I think that that McElwain internet connection there in South Carolina kind of hit up. We'll see if we can get him back. But
what in the world?
But yeah, I mean, very good points he was making. We're going to go to some of the comments. Justin Bryant says, do you guys think this will be determined by Rattler Jefferson or the Arkansas D-line versus Carolina O? I think it's going to come down to quarterback play. I think it is going to come down to Rattler and Jefferson because, one, Rattler's a scrambler playmaker. Jefferson, he's more of a runner, can throw it. He really proved what he could really do last week against Cincinnati. So we'll bring Chris back in. Chris, I was just bringing in some.
Apologize, man. I don't know. The Muschamp hackers are fighting.
Yep, Muschamp hackers trying to get in.
They don't like all the positivity. I think that's what it is.
Well, what it is, it's weird. Like when you're speaking, we could literally, seriously switch screens, put you in my studio, and what you're speaking, I could have said a year ago.
Yeah.
I mean, everything you're saying about bringing Pittman in, he was at Arkansas, went to Georgia, and come back. Beamer left, come back. It is crazy talking about the similarities, and you don't really realize it until what you're speaking. And what we went in the comment, and Matt, we'll break down the game, go ahead in the comments. It said, do you think the game will be determined by the quarterback play or the D-line and O-line play? I think it's going to come down to the quarterback play just because how important KJ Jefferson is to that offense. And we've seen, I don't know how much of the Arkansas game you've got to watch or break down, but just how much he's really broken down and getting that 3 levels of that passing this year, opposed to he's just seen as a running threat.
Yeah. I mean, admittedly, I haven't got to sit down and watch. I've watched the highlights. I didn't get to watch the entire game. I was really disappointed I didn't get to see the game on Saturday. We were out there flinging merch, and I wasn't near a TV, and I was like, the one game I wanted to see outside of South Carolina was the Arkansas game. But, no, listen, KJ Jefferson, a very capable player, obviously 6'4", what is he, 6'4", 240, something like that.
230,
yeah, I mean, real big physical dude. And, again, it'll be a challenge. You mentioned DJ Uiagalelei from Clemson. We faced off with him last year. And, I mean, I would say KJ Jefferson, though, is in a much different league than DJU, and I'm not even trying to crap on Clemson, but KJ Jefferson obviously regarded maybe as the best quarterback in the SEC, or at least one of the best, right up there with Bryce Young and some others. But I tend to think honestly it's going to be line of scrimmage. I mean, they're obviously both extremely important, but when I looked at this game over the summer, I'll go ahead and tell you, I picked Arkansas over the summer to win this game 31-24, and what I told people was I just hated the matchup up front because it feels like a game of Arkansas's strength and South Carolina's weakness. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't mesh well for the Gamecocks. And then you look at week 1 and what happened. And certainly week 1's a crapshoot. It doesn't define your entire season, but the Gamecocks had trouble at the line of scrimmage, at least on the offensive side. They couldn't withstand the Georgia State rush, and, give credit to Georgia State. Don't get me wrong, but Arkansas is going to present a different challenge, right? Also, the Hogs, as you obviously know this, return 4 or 5 guys up front on the offensive line. We're talking about a Gamecocks defensive front that, while I thought as the game progressed against Georgia State, the D-line took over and you feel like the defensive front and the run defense should be better than it was a season ago, you still gave up 200 yards against Georgia State. And you average giving up about 170, 175 last year, an abysmal number. And Arkansas is going to want to be physical, run the football. And now you have to deal with a dual threat guy like KJ Jefferson. They lost contain. South Carolina did a couple of times last week against Georgia State. Darren Granger, who was a running quarterback for GSU. You're just going to see that on steroids, I feel like, against Arkansas. So it's going to be a challenge on both sides. I think, obviously, you talk to any Gamecock fan and you see Brian Mobley's comment there. The greatest concern is the offensive line. Again, you can give Georgia State all the credit in the world you want, but you're talking about an O-line that had coming into that game 129 combined career starts, the entire 2 deep back. And, I had high hopes they'd be much improved. And to see sort of a similar result to what we saw last year, it left a lot to be desired. And so I think the reason I would say line of scrimmage is more important is because while Spencer Rattler's talent, I would say, bailed them out last week, he doesn't have a chance. This offense, with all the weapons it has, it does not have a chance, in my opinion, to do enough to keep up with a potent Arkansas attack and go pull this upset on the road.
Well, and it just goes to show what you're talking about, year one in a system compared to not only has KJ been with Arkansas 2 years, he's been underneath the same coordinator for 2 years, same head coach. So, and then, of course, with Odom, and being able. And the only reason why I mentioned, DJ was just the lack of size. What it's like to go down and try to scheme a running style quarterback. No way. And you see behind me, no way am I going to sit here and say and be a homer. I mean, KJ is a much better quarterback. And that's seeing him play for 2 years. He has not shown me that Dr. Pepper hype that I was hoping to see.
And we have such a glowing history against dual threat quarterbacks. You can ask, like I said, any Gamecock fan. I tell you, we have a tendency to make some guys look like Heisman Trophy caliber kind of guys. And KJ Jefferson's a player that doesn't need any of our help, I can assure you.
So going into the game, all right, and like I said, this is without really breaking down, we had a breakout wide receiver that I want to tell you, in the land of, transfer portals, and you got Spencer Rattler, coming into South Carolina. Well, we had a wide receiver, Trey Knox, that was a receiver. He got bumped to tight end, and then instead of transferring out, he goes out and gains 50 pounds. Yes, of course, there was times where he really needs to work on his blocking, but that's going to take time, really, when that part. But ended up catching 2 touchdowns, and I said a month ago he was going to have an impact on a game. I just didn't expect it to be that soon.
Yeah.
So when you have guys coming out of the backfield, they're going to have Dominique Johnson back in some capacity, but not full strength. You got Rocket Sanders, you got Trey Knox, then you've got Hazelwood, and then you've got Warren Thompson. So the big threat when it comes to you're talking about the defense. What is going to be your biggest emphasis on if you had to try to stop one thing first? What would you look at other than KJ? I mean, because of course we can say KJ, but outside of that.
Yeah, I mean, because I would go to immediately. I think for this South Carolina defense, you got to make KJ Jefferson one-dimensional. I mean, you just got to pick your poison. You can't let him beat you with both. I mean, I think the other thing, man, we emphasize stopping the run. I mean, you talk about Rocket Sanders, 20 carries for 117 yards, average 6 yards a pop. I mean, if you can't stop the run, you don't have a chance. I just don't think so because again, Arkansas, as you mentioned, got enough weapons. Knox with 6 catches for 75 and 2 tutties. Hazelwood's a former 5-star guy. I know we were kind of hoping we were going to get him because Beamer's ties with Oklahoma. Yep. So Arkansas's got plenty of weapons, man, to beat you. And so I think for me, the way I would attack Arkansas is sell out, stopping the run. And I know what KJ did last week with the passing game, but I just think if you can't stop the run, you don't have much of a chance. This is a secondary that was ranked top 10 in the country last year in pass defense. Now, you could argue one of the reasons it is because you could not stop the runs. The teams didn't have to throw. So I think you got to sell out on that. If you really believe in guys like Cam Smith, Marcellus Dial, Darius Rush, R.J. Roderick, Devontae Reed at the safeties, put them on an island, man. Give them a chance. Say, hey, at least to start the game, I think you have to sell out, stop the run. Dare I say, stack the box. Again, you've got to be fantastic in your discipline on the edges. Guys like Jordan Birch and Jordan Strawn. Linebacker play, which I thought was really impressive in week 1. That's been an area of concern for South Carolina over the last couple of years. They've got to be on point on their game. Guys like Brad Johnson, Sherrod Green, Debo Williams, Mo Kaba, Brad Johnson. They've got to have a fantastic game. But you got to take something away. You just got to take something away. Get Arkansas on some 3rd and longs, make KJ Jefferson make some throws on you. Again, you trust the secondary. They're going to bring it. And I will say this, I respect the heck out of the Arkansas offensive attack, but I do feel confident the Gamecocks will show up defensively. My greatest concerns, they just lie on the offensive side. Will they be able to keep up? And, I mean, you got to score to win in this game. You're not going to pitch a freaking shutout, right? So I would say stop the run first. Let your secondary work. If that backfires, obviously make an adjustment. But you feel like a top 10 nationally ranked pass defense coming from last year, led by Cam Smith, the preseason All-American. I think that's where you take your chances.
And you got Justin Bryant saying number 5 for Arkansas gives me PTSD. So I think that goes way back to Darren McFadden and
just whatever you do, don't run the wild hog. I don't want to see no more wild hog ever again. That's all I'm saying.
Well, before we go into, of course, the offensive side, and Arkansas can be in a similar situation when they're talking about the transfer portal and how it's helped them. You look at this year's team. I mean, it started with Felipe Franks, kind of what he did a little bit to not really set the world on fire, but get the program rolling. Then this year, of course, you got Drew Sanders, you got McLaughlin, you got Hazelwood, you got so many guys that have come in, and Landers, what has when of course I know this is a social media driven era, but what did it mean for y'all when you were, one, even in the radar for Spencer Rattler, but 2, that you got him? I mean, what did that do for the program?
Dude, I mean, I just, you heard the rumors kind of start to circulate and you thought, well, Beamer was at Oklahoma and maybe it could happen. And I mean, I remember last fall specifically, Fox College Football is dropping a graphic like, where could Spencer Rattler land? And South Carolina's not even on the graphic. So you're like, okay, maybe this is just a pipe dream. And I mean, I'll never forget sitting there. I was with my good buddy P-Doc. Shout out to P-Doc. We were sitting there having Mexican dinner or whatever, and you started hearing some rumblings, and he was just like, man, you ought to tweet out the Rattler gif of the snake Rattler. And I was like, maybe we will. Just let's have some fun. Why not? We'll have some fun with it. Tweet it out. Lo and behold, about an hour later, you see Austin Stogner's announcement drop, and then Spencer Rattler's right behind him. And I mean, I freaked out, man. We all did. I literally went live when it happened because I was contemplating, do I just put a tweet? Do I just put a reaction video? Do I just go live? I did all 3, right? It was like you couldn't make enough content that night. And I went live. I think like 2,000 people tuned in to the live, like watching live, 2,000 people. Like there were that many people that just wanted to talk about it and celebrate it. And I think it's huge for the program. I mean, I think the impact of landing a Spencer Rattler goes so far beyond just this season. Because you look back, my man, it's been since 1990 since the Gamecocks had a quarterback drafted. Like, that is crazy. when you think about it. And when you think about it, it's a quarterback-driven game. You got to have that guy. If you don't have a quarterback, you don't have a chance. Shane Beamer obviously recognizes that. You look at what they did last year. 4 quarterbacks played. It was the carousel under center. It's a miracle they won 7 games. So I think getting a Spencer Rattler on campus. Now, if he can be productive, you can get the most out of him or at least guide him to a successful season. I think all of a sudden, man, that changes not just quarterback recruiting, but recruiting as a whole. Like, hey, me as a top-notch player, a 5-star, I can go there and have success because they've done it with a different guy. That's what's so interesting about the transfer portal, my friend, is like, normally for a coach like a Beamer, a new coach, you don't get a game-changing guy like that in your program until like year 4, 5, 6, whatever. Now with the portal, you can go out and get a Spencer Rattler, and he's that game-changing type of player. That's been the interesting thing all preseason is we've tried to keep our expectations realistic, but it's like this is not a typical year 2, when you got a guy like that. So, dude, I mean, it's just been a huge shot in the arm for the program. It put South Carolina on a national stage. Last year in year 1, the Gamecocks were on Sports Center a couple of times for all the wrong reasons. And so to see that South Carolina notification on the ESPN ticker for something as positive as landing a Spencer Rattler, just huge for the program. Again, I think it speaks to the relationships that Shane Beamer has built. And now, again, you got to produce. Now you got to produce, right? So, again, if you can take him, get the most out of him, right, get him drafted, all of a sudden that changes the narrative of the quarterback position at South Carolina, which, again, as you know, you get the right quarterback in there. It feels like everything else just sort of takes care of itself.
Yeah, and Arkansas can say the same thing. I mean, a couple of years ago, we weren't even on the ticker of the pick'em games on College Game Day. Now we've got possibly college.
That's how you know you're bad, right?
Exactly.
When they're not even picking
you don't
your
even
game.
make the honorable mention games.
Yeah.
They don't even mention you when Alabama beats you. But then you go from that to having SEC network at the Texas game, SEC network at the Cincinnati game. So I mean, it's crazy.
And to your credit, my worst pick of the year last year, I think gambling wise, was I took Texas, and that was so stupid. That was so stupid.
That's going to make a lot of people mad. I'm going to clip that up.
Yeah. Hey, but it's horns down. We even got horns down merch.
Now we got a couple of years. Did you have before we
hate Texas early? Hate Texas early.
Alabama tried to throw some hate Texas merch out, and they used Matt Jones's picture. They used him on their shirt, and then Arkansas fans were quick to call him out for that. That's what you don't want to mess with Arkansas Twitter.
No, dude. I see it, bro. Because we obviously don't play in football every year. I'm a huge baseball guy.
Yeah.
So I see Arkansas Twitter during baseball season, and I mean it is.
So I wonder what your side of it when they called Robert Moore Oompa Loompa and then he hit the home run. I mean,
dude, I was there. I mean, it's you just something I love to say: tip your cap. You just got to tip your cap. I mean, you're Bob Moore. You're calling him Oompa Loompa, and I think he hit 2 bombs that game. And he pimps them. It's just, I mean, what are you going to do? To hit a ball like 7,000 feet? It's like, well. Y'all were talking. I mean, we were talking. Hey, good. I love it. I love the heckling. I love creating a home field atmosphere. But when a guy hits one like that, all you can do is just tip the cap and keep it moving. So,
and with the quarterback, we'll get back to the football. With a quarterback like Rattler, the one thing that was really alarming to me on Arkansas defense, and I stated it, the 3rd down conversions that Cincinnati was able to get. So, not getting your prediction or keys of the win, but I mean, what gives you hope on the offensive side, even though you have the O-line struggles, having that scrambler quarterback that's mobile, what hope does that give you, knowing that Arkansas does have weaknesses when it comes down to those 3rd down conversions?
Yeah, and in the back half of the defense too, I guess you guys are dealing with 2 or 3 key injuries is what we've been hearing. And I don't know if those are going to be things we know, by gamesmanship, obviously, or we're going to know they're certainly out, whatever. But it is sounding like 2 or 3 big-time guys in the back half of a defense that struggled against Cincinnati to stop the pass. I left the Georgia State game, and if you look at any of my content, and, I irritated some Gamecock fans because I was not satisfied with what I saw Saturday night with the offense, nor should anybody have been, right? That score was inflated because of the special teams. However, I leave that game, though, if it's a big if, the offensive line issues, I'm not even saying be elite up front, be average. Just be average. There are weapons on this offense that this offense can be really productive. And again, you mentioned it starts with 7. It starts with Spencer Rattler. He showed his elite arm talent getting out of the pocket. I think rolling him out and moving him out of the pocket on Saturday, I think will be a very wise decision by Marcus Satterfield. But then you've got weapons to play with. At running back, Marshawn Lloyd looks like he's 100%. Christian Beal-Smith, the Wake Forest transfer, he's going to be back, it sounds like Shane Beamer said in his Tuesday presser. You then got Jaheim Bell, who's just a Swiss Army knife, do-it-all, matchup nightmare, who who, again, you mentioned the Arkansas secondary, should be able to have success. Josh Vann, Antoine Wells on the outside at wide receiver, Jalen Brooks, who had a breakout game in game 1, 88 receiving yards, Austin Stogner at tight end. So you feel like if that line can come to play and just give some sort of push, not saying they got to run for 200, not saying they got to be elite, just give the offense a chance. I think there's enough weapons for them to have offensive success. But again, the problem is it's such a big if, and that's going to be, if you talk to any Gamecock fan, my friend, it's just the number one concern area is because it feels like we thought we were going to see that progression and that improvement in week 1, and it didn't come. So it's like, what is there realistically to tell us that it's going to happen? Against better competition on the road in conference play, right? So it's almost one of those things for me. I need to see it before I believe it, but the skill position players are there. There's no doubt. And then, of course, the matchup, like you mentioned, with Arkansas secondary. I will tell you on a side note, just within the matchups, Bumper Poole is a guy I love for Arkansas. Number one, the name's incredible.
Yep.
Bumper Poole. So he had 13 tackles in the game against Cincy, which is just such a typical stat line. Of course, he's leading Arkansas in tackles. He's probably going to set the tackles record for the Razorbacks.
He's pretty close to the tackle record.
Yeah. So keeping an eye on him. Obviously, I would assume he's the leader of you guys' defense and sort of the heart and soul. But I just what I'm expecting from Arkansas, man, both sides of the ball. A lot of physicality. I'm not saying that they're Georgia State or anything or similar, but I just think of Sean Elliott and then Sam Pittman, both line of scrimmage guys, offensive line coaches, real physical, nasty dudes. That's kind of the game I'm expecting, man. And that's why I go back to line of scrimmage in this game's at a premium, and certainly have a couple of really capable quarterbacks. But for South Carolina to have any chance to go on the road and pull the upset, they're just simply put on both sides. They're going to have to be better up front.
Well, we got that vaunted Jefferson Pilot 11 o'clock a.m. kickoff. That vaunted.
They ought to throw the JP logo up.
That's
there.
right. I miss those Jefferson.
Why not?
A lot of people don't remember those Jefferson Pilot games.
Dude, I do, man. I do. Those are fun. Those were a lot of fun. South Carolina, Arkansas had a couple of JP games back in the day.
Yep. Back when they play, I think back when they used to play South Carolina, they played it in Little Rock. That was back when they would play South Carolina and LSU in Little Rock, and that was my very first Arkansas game was in Little Rock, and they played Tennessee and Heath Schuler and just destroyed Arkansas. I remember it was so bad. This guy had nachos in his hand and a drink, and they kicked the field goal, and it just went all over him, and he just walked out of the stadium. He was like, the game's over. So, but
and to you guys' credit, I was going to say, man, I've had so many guys again that have played for South Carolina football on my show, and a lot of guys that played those early 2000s played in Little Rock, and dude, they've told me, they're like, bro, the loudest stadium I've ever played at was Little Rock. They're like, dude, it's not the most people, but it's just like this just concrete, just the sound is kept. He's like, dude, it's insanely loud.
Well, and I want to give you a little insight on it too. So right next to the stadium was a golf course, and they shut the golf course down, and that was the tailgating area. So not only, it was almost like an LSU atmosphere. People, if they played a night game, people were parking on the golf course all day, drinking all day, and then they would go into and so you're jam-packed. It's not like 70, 80,000. There's only like 40 or 50,000 capacity. It was just an old bowl. They don't even, like I said, they're trying to move away from that because it's just a rundown stadium, and you can't. Plus, with day and age of recruiting, it would be almost like you trying to play a game up in Charlotte every single year. Yeah. But we got two of them because we played Little Rock, and then we got the Texas A&M down in Dallas. So it's where programs are at when it's coming to building. You're giving away two games, almost sometimes 2 games a year to recruiting. So, but I'm really looking forward to this game. Of course, many other reasons. One outside of the Hog Talk. Love seeing anytime South Carolina comes to play and root against them. But just seeing them play again, and like we said before the show, put our hats aside. We both know we want both teams to be good when it comes to that rivalry, what it means to the state instead of, because like I said, if Clemson ends up winning, it'd be like 10 years since, South Carolina's won. So it's like, all right, you want it to be, because I went to a tailgate and, it was just one of the best times, down there, everybody getting along. So, I mean, it's with this Arkansas, South Carolina game too. It's like, this is one of those games where both are competitive. You get both games, playing Williams-Bryson in Fayetteville. It could turn into a very fun matchup because we don't know what's going to happen with this new SEC setup. in the pods, and if there's going to be cross play, and then with Texas and OU coming, we really don't know the future of the SEC.
Yeah. I mean, like you mentioned, it's always a really fun game. It seemed like it always was. I mean, dude, I was just thinking, bump Alabama, Georgia in the SEC title. Why not Arkansas, Carolina? Let's switch it up a little bit.
I'd love it.
No, I mean, I'll tell you this too, man. I know you guys will take care of them. I've got a lot of buddies going down to Fayetteville. I think there's going to be a great Gamecock turnout. And I think the reason, again, is because – and I've heard this about Arkansas fans too from former players, because they tell me, you know, I hear a lot about the fans. They're like, dude, they're the most ruthless, like talk the most crap. But he's like, but they do it in a way that's like a respectful, like, you know, you can tip your cap to them. They tip their cap to you. And it's just like, it's all fun and games, part of the SEC experience. You know what I mean? There's like a mutual respect on both sides. So no, I'm looking forward to it, to the game, man. Like I said, I think it's going to be a really, really good football game. I think it's been an interesting line movement in this game, starting at 11.5, coming down to 7.5, around 8.5, whatever. And again, a huge game for both programs. And that's what you want early in the season, man. It's an early season test for both. And I know Arkansas to this point has been more tested than South Carolina. And you could argue, I think both sides could argue why it's a bigger game for them than the other. But, you know, a massive game either way. And these are the type of games you come to these respective schools to play in. And it's going to be a lot of fun for sure, man. I can't wait for it.
Yeah, and you could say, you know, because we said at the beginning of the show, Arkansas is kind of a year ahead, and we're trying to show that dominance where we can compete with the West. You got to win the games that you're supposed to win. So yes, and we were talking about
like,
we got Cincinnati.
Yeah,
you know,
I was just gonna say, not to cut you off, but it's speaking on that note. It's for both sides. It's like for Arkansas, you're gonna make that jump in year 3. You got to win the home game, you know what I mean, against a Shane Beamer in year 2. And then it's like, if for South Carolina, if you want to be what Arkansas was last year, stealing one like this, I mean, that's how you do it. So, hey, big for both sides.
Yeah, and we got the win against Texas last year, got the Texas A&M win. I mean, Mississippi State, you know, it starts is rolling and stuff. But, man, again, I really appreciate having you on. It was a really good time. We definitely have to chop it up again. I mean, definitely on down the road in other sports. You know, you said you cover baseball, so maybe that baseball series we can chop it up again.
Dude, yeah, baseball, basketball, man. I stay busy year round and rock with it. And I will say this, man. I was going to say Arkansas, you guys have got it rolling in regards to your athletics department. I mean, I think look at the SEC. Arkansas, if they're not the best, they're one of the best in regards to a healthy athletic department right now in the major sports. You know, you look at the coaches, you look at the programs, you look at the success, the winning. So, hey, congratulations and keep up, man. Like I said, I don't envy being in the SEC West, especially on the football side. But like you mentioned, man, just back to the main point, really excited that South Carolina and Arkansas are renewing this rivalry, and hope that it's one that we can play it a little more consistently.
All right, man. Hey, before we go, tell fans where they can find you, plug your social medias, your YouTube, Twitter, where everybody, that way they can keep up with what you got to say during the game and post game. If they want to talk trash or accept defeat, whichever one they want to do, man.
Yeah, dude, I'd love to have the Hog fans enter our mentions and talk trash. We chop it up, man. We, you know, the beauties and the banters, I like to say, but we're at the Spurs Up Show across all social media platforms, you know, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, you know, YouTube, Twitch, TikTok, you name it, we're there. Also, of course, the podcast, the Spurs Up Show, drops Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I'll drop my prediction, game breakdown, everything for this game on the Friday podcast. We also have a daily live show, which is called The Daily Crow, which airs on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Twitch Monday through Friday, 12 to 2. So if you want to tune in that, any Arkansas fans, you're more than welcome to call in. We take calls at 843-790-3377. You can call into that show, talk some trash, leave your questions, whatever it might be. Talk trash in the comments. I don't care what you do.
There you go.
You know, and outside of that, we've got merchandise, tsus.store. We're at thespursupshow.com. But if you just look up the Spurs Up Show anywhere, you will find us. And, yeah, we have a lot of fun with it for sure.
Well, again, I appreciate you, but that will do it for this Wednesday's episode of the Hog Talk Wednesday preview with Chris Phillips of the Spurs Up Show. And we will be back on Sunday to recap the game. Hopefully we're talking about an Arkansas win. And again, much love to you, man. Thank you. You've been a great guest, and that will do it. We will catch you on Sunday.
Appreciate it.